Today we're making chicken croquettes, and this dish clocks in at 687 calories per portion, 36 grams of proteins, 66 grams of carbs, and 23 grams of fat. And to get the calories for the dish, I've done this 6 or 7 times, and I've measured the amount of oil and panko and flour and egg, and I've done the mean value for that. So it's an estimation as usual, but I think it's a fairly accurate one because I roughly get the same amount of oil and everything every time. So I think it's a pretty good estimation. And this is something you can do if you have leftover chicken fillets, or you can do what I'm doing. What we're going to do is we're gonna boil 2 chicken fillets for 20 to 30 minutes. And just bring some water to the boil and salt the water, and then put in your chicken for roughly 20 to 30 minutes. Once they're done, all we need to do is take them out and put them to the side and let them cool down a bit. And that means that we're going to start off with our bechamel sauce, which is going to be the filling for our chicken croquettes. And to do that, we're going to have 20 grams of butter and 20 grams of flour. And for our filling, we also want some onion and some cured ham. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the butter that we're going to use for our bechamel sauce, put that in a frying pan and let that heat up. And we're going to use that butter to fry our onion. So once our pan and our butter gets warm, we can start chopping our onion. And for that, it's just standard onion chopping, nothing fancy or anything. Chop your onion fairly fine, and then we're going to place that in our pan and fry that until they've softened and start to brown a bit. And while we're waiting on that, we can chop our chicken fillets. I've done this in a KitchenAid with a paddle attachment. That works as well, but it feels like it's a bit rough on the machine, so I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that, but it works. So I like to chop them instead, and all we need to do is just finely chop them. It's nothing tricky at all, just chop up your chicken until they've become small bits, and then put them in a bowl. When we're done with that, our onions should be almost done. As you can see, they're starting to become translucent, and there's a bit of browning in the bottom as well, and that's good. So now all we need to do is add some salt. And then we're going to add the rest of our butter and also our flour. And we're going to fry that all together for a couple of minutes as well, just to cook the flour a bit. And we have some burning in the bottom of our pan, but that's no problem, because we're going to add 3 deciliters of milk in just a second, and we can use that to deglaze our pan. So after frying the flour for a couple of minutes, it's time to add our milk. I want to use 3 deciliters of 1.5% milk. And since this is going to be our base for our chicken croquette, we need to make this bechamel a bit thicker than you normally would. So we're going to be cooking this for quite a while until it's thickened up fairly well. But we also want to season this, so we're going to hit this with some pepper, some nutmeg and some salt. I also like to add a bit of spice to this. That means that we're gonna add some chipotle chili, cayenne pepper, and I like to do roughly 1 grams of chipotle, and this is something I make for myself and for my kids, and my kids despise spicy food. They're 5 and 7, so roughly 1 grams of chipotle is a bit spicy, but they don't complain or notice it that much. You can also see that my scale did not like the magnetic field from my stove, so it freaks out a bit. But roughly 1 grams of chipotle and half a gram of cayenne, and that makes it a bit spicy, but not spicy enough that little kids think it's too spicy. Now we need to thicken this up, as I said, since this is going to be the base for our chicken croquettes. So we're going to add some salt and then allow this to thicken up. And then we need to cool this. You can do this the night before you want to make your croquettes, or at least keep this in the fridge for a couple of hours until it's cooled down. But if you do it the day before, then you're sure that it has set and is cold enough to use. So this is roughly the consistency we want. And that means that we're at our final step before we put this in the fridge, and that is to chop some ham. And this is 80 grams. And as with the chicken, we're just going to roughly chop this and then place this in our bowl. So in with the ham, and once we have our ham in there, all we need to do is add our bechamel and put that in the fridge. And since everything here is cooked, the chicken is cooked, the ham is cooked and everything, that means that once this is mixed, we can check our seasoning to make sure that it's well seasoned. So check your salt and pepper levels here. And if you feel that it lacks in salt or anything, just add some more. Once you're happy with your seasoning level, just put some plastic wrap on there and place that in the fridge. I would suggest overnight, but I think a couple of hours might suffice as well. At least this mixture needs to be cold. So here we are, next day, and we're gonna do our classic breading stations with flour, eggs and panko. And as I said, the amounts for everything in the recipe is the average that I got for doing this a number of times. Remember to season your eggs, flour and panko as well. And to do these, I like to use an ice cream scoop. It's a clickable one, so you can release them fairly easily, which makes this much simpler. And we're gonna get roughly 8 of these. And that means that this scoop is perfect, because then we get roughly 1 scoop per croquette. So we're just gonna scoop this up, drop that in the flour, and I like to make all of them, roll them in the flour, and then go for the eggs and panko, because that makes this process less sticky and you don't have to wash your hands as much. So I would suggest roll them in the flour with a fork, then place them on a separate plate, and once all of them are done, you can just roll them in the eggs and the panko. So once you're done making all of them, all you need to do is roll them in the eggs, make sure that they're totally covered, and then in the panko. And once you're done with that, all we need to do is fry these. So to fry them, we're gonna use some vegetable oil, and we're gonna bring that up to 180 degrees. I like to fry them for roughly 5 minutes, but I don't have a timer or anything. I want them to be golden brown, and that's usually 2.5 minutes, and then flip them another 2 to 2.5 minutes. It depends on how hot you keep your oil, so it's an estimation. And once we lower our chicken, our temperature is gonna drop a bit, so keep an eye on that. And also I like to do 3 or 4 at a time. It depends on, but that also depends on how big your pot is and how much oil you have. So after roughly 2 to 2.5 minutes, I would turn these up because the bottom of the pot is going to be a bit hotter. So to even that out, it's a good idea to flip them and also keep an eye on your oil temperature. And that means that these are basically done. And I actually like to make these the day before I eat them and heat them up in the air fryer. To eat with these, I'm gonna make some fried potatoes, and I don't mean fried in the oil, I mean fried in a frying pan. That means that we're basically just gonna chop up them like potato chips and fry them in a frying pan. And as for everything, it's much better if you use a lot of butter, but I'm not gonna use any butter at all, and they're still delicious. All we need to think about then is that potatoes require a lot of salt, so salt them quite heavily and they're gonna be super. And there's no need to rinse them to get rid of any starch or anything. It's totally fine just to fry them away. And as you can see, after a day in the fridge they are a soggy mess, but you can revive them and make them as new in the air fryer. So basically you can't hear anything, there's no, they're just a soggy mess after being in the fridge. All we need to do to fix that is just put them in an air fryer. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them in for, it depends on what air fryer you have, but I have the Ninja. And what we want to use is the air fryer setting. And we want to do 10 minutes at 190 degrees. That means that it's really easy to sync up with our potatoes, and all you need to do is to flip them once you're halfway through. Keep an eye on them, it takes roughly 9 to 10 minutes, and I actually think these become better if you put them in the air fryer, because then they're really heated through, and super hot, which they're not if you just fry them. And as you can hear, they're nice and crispy again. So that's it. This is all. It's a really tasty dish. I like to put some barbecue sauce in there. And I hope you give this a try, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.